Absolutely, and totally, India Inc. has gone hip, and to talk about how India's startup boom is democratizing entrepreneurship, we invite on stage founder and group CEO, OYO, Ritesh Agarwal, in conversation with founder and CEO, Humans of Bombay, Karishma Mehta. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our guest, please.
Thank you for that. Hi Ritesh, lovely to be here, and thank you all for attending. Very excited to conduct the session with you.
Thank you for having me here, and great to see you after COVID for the first time in person. And thank you so much for having me here.
Very, very excited. We've already done Ritesh's story on Humans of Bombay. I think it was during the pandemic. So I have to start from there. Let's talk a little bit about your journey and how kind of you went from, I know that you were very, very entrepreneurial. You've sold SIM cards, you've done all of that, to founding OYO. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
You know, I have done this a few times, so I will try and see if I can be more articulate than earlier. I think the story of going from, Rayagada in Odisha, which is where I grew up in, to building OYO, and I feel I'm still building it because it's still the early days here, I think is a combination of three things. And I believe that hopefully these are the three things that will resonate with a lot of young entrepreneurs starting to build their own businesses. I think the first one is the story of, dreams, which is being able to think about big aspirations without limitation. So growing up in Rayagada, I think being able to get an IT job was really like the top aspiration, right? One would aspire to have. But I think in the new India that we live in, access to internet structurally changes aspirations of people, right? Because now suddenly you read about another entrepreneur in another part of the world who just had a good idea, wanted to work hard and make a positive difference and could build a big business. So I thought, why not me? I think that was the first one, dreaming. The second thing was exposure. I think there were a lot of new businesses that were getting built around me, which were prepared for the next generation. So, like you mentioned, I started selling SIM cards. I started selling SIM cards for Airtel, which was, and I hear Mr. Mittal's here as well between today and tomorrow. I saw that there was a new company which was operating in a very different way and was still able to make a big difference. Exposure of the internet to be able to see that businesses can be built on top of that. For example, if OYO had to distribute through physical shops, we would have taken 30 years to build a distribution network. Now we can just put ourselves on a mobile app and be ready to sell. So I would say dreaming, exposure, and I would say ecosystem, right? I think ecosystem ka bahut bada badlav hai. I think, at the time when I was starting, there were people from US, from different parts of the world wanting to come join young startups. Our first hotel owner, Mr. Yadav, I remember, I tried to convince him कि आप OYO में जुड़ जाएं हमारे साथ में. So he says, देखिए, my occupancy is 15-20%. So it will not go worse than this. So I will give you a go. But you are telling me that you'll take the occupancy to 40-50%. Looking at you doesn't look like it will happen. But I'll still give you a go. That ability to trust someone and say that I'm going to give them a go, I think is a big deal. So I think that dreaming, having exposure and being able to have the ecosystem around you where India has changed from being a place where a government job is the only, I must not say that that's not aspiration today, it's still very aspirational. But at the same time, there are other aspirational jobs as well. And one of them is working with a startup, and I'm very lucky to be a part of this India.
That's fantastic. And I think that everything that you mentioned was so apt for the discovery that's happened through the time. I mean, I can't possibly continue without addressing the COVID period that, I mean, all of us have been through in these past 2 years. Terrible time. I hope it doesn't come back. But what was that like, especially from an OYO fund, given the tourism industry was probably the most hit? How did that pan out?
So first off, I think it does look like we are getting a little bit past COVID. Both of us are sitting without masks. Quite a few of us are here, and we feel comfortable about it. So I think that's a good starting point in my view. Look, I think, let me first talk about this before I talk about the past. The first thing is, I think there is definitive receding of COVID, and people are more comfortable going out, meeting with their friends. So just to call this out, we've had 2 straight weeks, which are the biggest weeks we have had ever since the onset of the pandemic. We had just in India, of course, I mean, we have a big business around the world, but just in India, we had 8 lakh bookings just last 1 week. That's a testament to how I think, of course, I would very happily take that for Oyo, but I think I must tell you this, that it just tells the, power of Indians traveling. Half the people I know who I reached out saying that Bombay mein ho, because I was earlier thinking that I'd come a little bit earlier. And most of the people over the Baisakhi or Easter weekend were not in Bombay. They were all in one of the places nearby, right? So I think there is a clear shift in, post or coming of the post in my view of the pandemic. And Omicron wave taught us this. There was an Omicron wave 3 months back, but the travel did not drop so much. Flights still were flying, hotels still were getting filled up and so on. So I think what I learned from COVID was 3 things. The first is the power of resilience. I have always believed for an entrepreneur, you have to keep digging when you're inside a tunnel. My father works now for a road construction company. So that's why I hear about these stories. So when you're in a tunnel and inside and you're digging, at some point of time you may feel that it's darkness all through, right? But you have to keep digging and there is always light at the end of the tunnel. So I think in the time of COVID, there was always this feeling saying that, why is it happening just to us, right? Like, why is this, like, when will this go away? Even though you knew that someday it will change, vaccines will come, life will be good, but there's always this thing of saying, by when will it go away? I think we had this conviction of saying that, hoga kabhi na kabhi, people will travel again, and that's happening today, thank God. That was one. This power of perseverance is unprecedented, and I'd say this to every entrepreneur who's hopefully listening to us here. That is, you may be building your business and you may be losing your most important colleague. You may be running a business and you may be losing your best customer. You may be having an investor who's saying that if you don't make returns in a few months, I'm going to be unhappy. You should know that, if you keep going at it, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. So that's one thing I learned. The second thing I learned is the power of having a team which truly works like a family. I didn't have my senior leaders leave me in the time of the pandemic, and if at all, we all got closer. And in that, one of the things that helped me was the power of reflection. I have learned that experiences, people say, is very valuable, right? Experience ka bahut mahत्व hota hai, aapne itne saal dekha hai. I think I will say a provocative statement, to pura sunna aap. Experiences, in my view, are not as valuable as much as reflections of those experiences are. What it means is, if you have experience on something and you don't do anything about it, then it's of no value. But if you have the experience and you can reflect on it and say, what can I do better by using that, that's very valuable. So that's what we did as a management. We spent a lot of time reflecting कि हमने क्या अच्छा किया, क्या हम बेहतर कर सकते थे, and then worked on improving it. What else? I think the third thing is, something that we were talking about is the power of, companies which work with small businesses and companies which are systemic to the Indian society, right? Like, you may think that COVID mein kaun travel kar raha tha. Reality is a lot of Oyo hotels were full in Mumbai at that point of time. Of course, we were not making any money on them. We were selling them very cheap because that was the right thing to do. Because we were one of the biggest providers for Vande Bharat mission. We were one of the biggest COVID center extensions for hospitals. So I was very lucky that our company could do its bit. So I think that's my big takeaway from COVID. But the big story is people are traveling. And if you haven't booked yet for summer season, book soon, because rooms and flights are all getting full very soon.
I think that's just good news. That I think there's some semblance of normalcy and travel and I guess making those memories is back. But I distinctly remember that during the pandemic, we spoke to a bunch of people who were using Oyo facilities as COVID centers, essentially because I remember this one story where the person was COVID positive and the landlord asked him to leave. And he ended up staying at an Oyo because Oyo's doors were open. So I think that in that adversity, to find the strength to still continue pushing people was amazing. And big congratulations that you guys managed to do that even when it was so tough for you.
Thank you. No, I think, Karishma, this is a very important thing that you're saying, right? New age businesses like ours, and I will not just say Oyo, right? I would even call out Ola, I would call out Byju's, all the new digital companies rose up to the occasion when pandemic happened. And specifically at Oyo, we have seen that we've become like the service in distress. I was speaking to someone, जिन्होंने कहा कि I was away in a small town. I didn't know where to go. I missed my train. So I could book an Oyo and I knew that I was home. So I think this COVID story, I'll tell you the one that is closest to my heart. In NCR region, there was once this period initially, wave 1 के समय हुआ था, when doctors को लोग कह रहे थे कि आप society छोड़ के चले जाएं. So there was this AIMS doctor who was actually serving COVID patients. He, his wife, children and dog were all asked to leave their society. Right? And of course, we were very happy to host them. And the person went on to save 50 people's lives over the next, few months. So I think we are very lucky to be playing a part in time of distress. But I think that's an opportunity. I don't see it as saying that हम लोग कुछ benefit करें. I think that's a part of what we do. It is to make sure that people have a place available for whatever reason they would like.
That's fantastic. And now that, like you mentioned, there's a semblance of normalcy returning and the tourism industry is up and running again, how do you think it's changed through this period? Because obviously concepts like work from home, staycation, workation have become very, very normal in the work culture as well. So how do you think that it's evolved?
Yeah, I think work from anywhere is a concept that, every company is now coming to reality of terms with. Look, I think, first off, I believe that the way people used to work, the way people used to live, and the way people used to travel, I personally believe has changed with the pandemic, and there are few changes which are not going to go back to what it was pre-pandemic. मुझे लगता है कि that's a one-time change that's happened. And flexible working is a very critical part of it. इसमें you will see that earlier, weekends for us used to be Fridays and Saturdays, right? I'm increasingly seeing weekends have now started becoming work weekends, where people book for 4 days, from Friday through to Monday, because people know that I can do video calls on Monday, at least in some professions where it is doable. Second is the power of homestays. I think homestays are dramatically changing the face of our country. I'll tell you this, right before pandemic, our company started rural homestays as an opportunity. So there is a town called Kevadia, now called Ekta Nagar in Gujarat, where we went to a few agriculture, farmers who had a house, kacha makan tha, and they made one of their rooms into a pakka makan, and they said, we are happy to host people in that place and make business out of it. These properties are running at 70% occupancy for last 2 years flat, including the time of pandemic, because people could not travel internationally. So they saw India for the first time. And now they don't want to travel internationally because they say, what a beautiful country, you want to go see other places in our own nation. So I think workations, rural tourism, homestays, I think a lot of these are one-time moves and they are here to stay for a long time. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to us or here in the room have either already experienced homestays in the last 2 years or will be experiencing homestays in the next 3 to 4 years. And we, of course, through Oyo Homes hope to make a difference. But, there are many other companies out there and we hope, and look, I always think that our job as entrepreneurs is to make a positive difference. But we will never be the only people serving. There will be many people, and we just hope to be doing our job good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree, especially with, it's such an interesting stat that you said that it's changed from Friday to Monday because you can just take work calls. I think that especially like a hybrid model is something that I think most people are comfortable with and companies are extending that. So that's amazing to hear. And I think that the future is exciting. Ritesh, what about digitalization? How has that played a factor in this ecosystem in the tourism industry for OYO during the pandemic and now. How has it been?
So, I will take it maybe 3 steps back. The most important bit is to say that, India is a country of entrepreneurs, right? If you see around ourselves, we see a kirana shop, an automobile repair shop, a hardware shop. This is what at least like all of us have grown up with. If you grew up in a middle income family, you'd see all these dukaan nearby your house and, you would effectively आपका रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी इसी से चलती है. I think my belief has been, at least I as an entrepreneur believe, that for companies in India, there are 2 choices of building businesses. Either you can work with these small businesses, make them successful and in the process become successful yourself, or try to compete with them. I believe that the latter is a very bad idea. The reason for that is people who are inherently entrepreneurial, आप उनके साथ काम करेंगे तो by design, और they're all successful entrepreneurs. हमने तो जब शुरुआत करा था, we were not successful. They were all successful. So you're always the average of 5 people around you. So if I surround myself with 10,000 successful entrepreneurs, there is a high probability that I'll be successful. So I think small businesses have been systemic to our country, and companies which make small businesses systemic to them will be successful, is my view. And that's why OYO is very deeply connected to the power of small businesses in India. Now, small businesses ecosystem, there is a big shift happening. The big shift is of digitization and technology. I believe that fundamentally technology here is to make a significant positive difference for communities around ourselves. Now, within this, it's very critical to use technology the right way, right? Like there is sometimes you may see technology as a challenge or by fear, but the other is to embrace it. And I believe that small businesses or businesses who are already successful actually have a head start over other digital companies to be more digital, which is true for all of our small hotels. So big picture, I am very excited about the power of digitization, but let me give you a few examples of how it is shifting.
Booms and the world sees India for what it is. I mean, there's so many different worlds within India. What do you think about that?
So, I see COVID as almost like a resetter. COVID se har cheez, you can see that as a challenge, saying that, what was going well has gotten reset. Or you can see it as an opportunity, saying it's got reset, now we'll try and make the most out of it. I think in the tourism fraternity at least, while there is a breadth or we had a breadth of feeling of dismay given the impact of the pandemic to our businesses, but I think there is a sense of increasing optimism towards saying that we will rebuild, and this time when we rebuild, we will build it bigger, we'll build it nicer, and we'll build it more sustainable. So what I mean by that is, India is a forthcoming destination, both for international travelers as well as our domestic travelers. India had over 1 billion domestic visits right before the pandemic, and increasing as we speak. And I hope that we'll get back there or even further in a period of time. So I think tourism, in my view, is going to come back with vengeance. And in the last 2 weeks are something to say. I think the next 8 months are going to be very busy for us, and good kind of busy. The second thing that I believe, which I said is nicer, is that we have spent the last 2 years. They always say that when there is a storm in the sea, the fishermen prepare their net to be able to go back fishing whenever the sea is nicer, right? Calmer waters. So I think last 2 years was like storm for our businesses. So we now are preparing to go back fishing, but last 2 years we did knit our nets right, which means that we focused on training our people, building the right technology. We built lots of product features over the last 2 years that we believe is valuable. Like for example, if you remember, 2 saal pehle we had a lot of feedback from our hotel owners saying that reconciliation you can make better on time, response time can be quicker. We really invested in getting all those right in the last 2 years. So I believe that not just us, but the broader tourism industry will do it nicer. The third is sustainable. So, you may have, a lot of us may have seen, of course, with unhappiness, the recent video of this person in, Ladakh driving a car in the water. Of course, I'm sure a lot of you felt very unhappy seeing that. I believe that that's got to change. And everybody in the tourism industry is coming back together to sort of say that how do we make sure that it is sustainable? That is, in the summer season, how do we make sure that when a large number of city goers go to the mountains or the beaches in the winters, we ensure that we leave it to its own, quality and niceness as it was earlier, rather than making it incrementally worse. So I think these are the three things that I think tourism will look like in the coming years, and we are hopefully going to play a reasonable part in that.
Just a small subsect of a question here. What about the profitability factor in the tourism industry? Because that's so widely debated about. A little bit about that, if you can.
So I think I will break it into two parts. One is profitability for our business, and the second is profitability for our, ecosystem. So I think for our company, as you can imagine, last two fiscals, the top line, of course, and the revenues did come down because of the impact of pandemic, but it is sharply recovering in the recent past. But at the same time, last 2 years, we were able to use technology to be able to build significant amount of operating efficiency, right? So whether it is in the form of consumers, 80% of our customers talking to us via chatbots, 80% of our patrons engaging with us via chatbots, so our cost structures have become much better. So my belief is as the revenue comes back, we have a clear path towards getting to the green in near future. Of course, we've just, as you know, we have filed for a potential public offering. So I can't share specific timelines for the future, but I can tell you that we are in the right direction there.
That's amazing. Can we have a huge round of applause already, just in advance?
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
That's amazing news, and I hope it goes well. Questions now on the youth, right? Youth and startup. We were just having such an interesting discussion before we got on stage. What is your message to those who have these dreams, have the aspirations, or have the fear? We discussed fear right before we got on, or that voice that tells you, maybe not. What is your advice and what is your message?
Look, this is one of my most passionate topics, the topic of entrepreneur from the small town India. Whether it is Darbhanga in Bihar, whether it is Bhawanipur in West Bengal, whether it is Gorakhpur or a small town in Uttar Pradesh, we are seeing entrepreneurs come from every breadth of the country like never before. And most times when people think about small town India, they think those are markets where you can go and build your business. What we should start thinking about small town India, and coming from one small town boy himself, is they are not excited about building a big business in their own towns only. They want to build big national businesses at the least, and they want to build big global businesses as an outcome. That's the new. So that's the new, and it's coming because of exposure, right? Because there's YouTube, you know your friends, you see more stories. So I think that's changing. So they're not there waiting to become your market. They are there waiting to come and take your market if you don't do a good job in time. The second, and I think the more important bit, what I would like to tell them is 2 to 3 things. First is be fearless. It's okay to fail. There is risk in everything, right? I was thinking that, if I get a job, I can still be removed if I don't do a good job. So there is risk in even doing a job. So if there is a risk in doing a job, so I will just do what I'm good at. So if I feel I'm good at entrepreneurship, maybe I will just do that. So I think, being fearless, surrounding yourself with good people, and most importantly, being perseverant. Don't give up too early. I think these are my personal learnings, but that's it. I'll say that I'm myself learning. I continue to do, make sometimes good decisions, sometimes, learnings. But, I think that's what I would say to the new entrepreneur. I'll tell you this. आप अगर किसी भी entrepreneur से आजकल मिले, marginal new entrepreneurs becoming successful, there is more than 50% probability that that kid comes from a town whose name you don't know. You would not have heard about Raigada before you met me. I can tell you this, that आप जितने लोगों से मिलेंगे वो ऐसे जगह से आते हैं जब उन शहरों का नाम नहीं सुने. So that's the new change I'm seeing from the small town India that's coming here.
The future is bright, and I must insist that you share the anecdote that you were telling me before about the little business with chocolate. You must. I think that everybody here would love to hear about it.
Yeah, I was just telling, so one of the things about Karishma is that she's just so passionate about human stories, right? When I read Humans of Bombay, I can't resist but read, and I keep reading, right? It doesn't stop, so I read the whole thing. So I'm glad you called this out. The Thiel Fellowship changed my life. So Peter Thiel is the founder of PayPal, early investor in Facebook. He gives $100,000 to 20 people under the age of 20. Acceptance rates are lower than Ivy Leagues, but the condition is you have to stop out of university. I thought that's great. You get paid not to go to university. That's on a lighter note. I was the first Asian resident to be a Thiel fellow. And it's not like, they disagree with education. They just believe that our first line on a contract said, we never let university interfere with education. So education to har jagah hai. University is just one of the ways of doing it. Entrepreneurs learn from the field by executing on the ground. So it changed my life. I got exposure to people I had never thought. It was my first international visit ever. So it made a huge difference to my life. So I wanted to make the same for other folks. So I partnered with the Naropa Fellowship to give equity-free grants to a few entrepreneurs only from the hills, from Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh, to be able to build their businesses. So I was talking about this story of 3 Kashmiri friends who have set up a trout farming business, which earlier used to just sell trouts within Kashmir. After our grant, now is able to make sure that those trouts, they are one of the suppliers for Fresh to Home, Licious, and a lot of these new age meat companies. Or there is the Himalayan Chocolate. This is a company in Himachal, up in the hills, and makes local barley infused chocolate. And they are sold out, no supply available. The name of the company is the Himalayan Chocolate. Please support these, 2 young boys building these businesses. So I hope these are examples of the new small town India who could be in a village with 200 people and still make a successful business and make the families in the village as successful as well.
Yeah. Big congratulations.
Thank you.
That's it. We're at time. So thank you so much, Ritesh. I am personally always so inspired every time I speak with you. And and I think that everybody in the audience resonates because you're just supremely inspiring. And we're looking forward to the new India and everything else that's coming with it. And I think that you've shown us the vision and we hope it comes through. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Ritesh, you didn't tell us when you were listing.
I was told that question will not be asked. I was just kidding.
You can say no comments.
Yeah, no comments. But look, I think it's coming.
Okay.
That's all I will say.
We'll take that for now.